Yeah, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. What? What the hell? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below to give you a pretty good flavor about what the Horror Movie Syllabus is about. But in short, we are going to look at a particular subgenre of horror and then talk about 3 movies from that subgenre. Today's subgenre is the horror western, which is a sort of a bit of a niche subgenre. It's not one that's super common. It's one that I found to be rather surprising, actually, mostly in terms of how many there actually are. But you have to understand what we mean by horror western. See, when you think of the western movie, you think of certain tropes. You think of like cowboys and horses and six shooters and Indians and saloons and the whole bit. So it doesn't really lend itself to thoughts of horror per se. But when it comes to the horror western, you start to see a lot of these tropes or motifs pop up, and that's what kind of identifies the genre. When you see things like desert landscapes or open plains or cowboys on horses, it gives you the indication that what you're looking at is a horror western. And honestly, a lot of the times, what we're really talking about are what we call neo westerns, where it's not set in the old west in the 1800s, but rather in more of a modern time, but still has those western motifs. The photography, the wide open, broad landscape shots, and the cowboy feel, cowboy characters, Indian characters. Those things still pop up. And we're going to talk about both today. We're going to talk about horror movies that are both neo-Western and horror movies that are just straight up classical Westerns set in the Old West times, and kind of period pieces, if you will. Now, the horror Western's interesting to me personally because I always thought for a really, really long time that I did not like Western movies. I hated them. And it was only recently, a few years ago, that it dawned on me that I don't hate westerns at all. I actually like them very much. I hate John Wayne. See, when I was a kid, my grandparents would watch old John Wayne movies, and I hated them. To me, the Western was John Wayne. It was, Howdy Pilgrim and all that nonsense. It's just really corny, and I really can't get into it. To this day, I can't get into it. But to me, that's what a Western was. And it wasn't until I'd seen, I revisited the genre a few years back with, watching the Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, things like that, to see that no, it's just John Wayne that I don't like. The actual Western formula works for me very well, and it actually translates into a lot of other hero journey type movies, sci-fi and superhero movies, things like that. But we are getting off topic. We're not really here to talk about the Western genre. We're here to talk about the horror Western genre. But again, it follows a lot of the same tropes. It has a lot of the same ideas, kind of following an anti-hero. Usually, again, maybe he's wearing a hat or on a horse or something like that, or maybe he just kind of has that kind of that same Clint Eastwood style reckless abandon. You can feel the horror western. You can feel the tropes of the western in the horror western. It's not so much when you see it, but it kind of is. It kind of is one of those things that you watch it and you realize, oh, this is actually a western, as evidenced by the fact that some of the movies we're going to talk about today, you don't think western necessarily when you hear it, especially when you hear the title, but it's a horror western, and I'll make the case for that as we go along. As usual, we're going to rank the movies as undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate level. And in this case, we're going to go in the level of gruesomeness, how gruesome these movies get. And also stay tuned to the end because at the end I'm going to be answering a random horror trivia question from Horror Trivia Pursuit. And we'll see if I can answer it on camera live. First time reading it, no preparation. So with all that said, let's go ahead and saddle up and get into these horror westerns. The first horror western we're talking about today, the undergraduate level selection, is Near Dark. Near Dark came out in 1987, and right off the bat, we're going to talk about how a horror western isn't necessarily obviously a western on the surface, as Near Dark is clearly a vampire movie. But we'll get into that. If you haven't seen the movie, Near Dark is the story of a young man who meets a young girl who is not quite so young because she's actually a vampire. and she bites him and tries to recruit him into her nomadic vampire clan. And the question is whether or not he'll fit in with them and decide to embrace the new nomadic vampire lifestyle, or if he'll return to his family that is frantically and desperately searching for him. And I'll stop there because if you haven't seen the movie, I would say this movie is maybe a must see. I wouldn't go so far as to say bona fide horror classic, but this movie is fantastic. It is one of the underrated vampire gems. And one of the ones I didn't talk about in our vampire subgenre video, but one that I saved for this subgenre specifically because of the Western motifs in it. Like I said, the movie on its surface is just a vampire movie, but it is very clear when you watch it the roots in the Western that it has. I mean, from our main protagonist, played by Adrian Pasdar, who is basically a cowboy. He's riding a horse. He's got the cowboy hat, the whole bit. To just the panoramic landscape shots, the open plains, the open desert. It has that Western feel, or that neo-Western feel, because again, it's set in modern times. And it's very, very effective. It's a gorgeous film to look at. And part of the reason why it's so gorgeous is its director, Academy Award winner Catherine Bigelow, an incredible director who is early in her career here, but you can see the talent on display, especially when you take into consideration this is not exactly a high budget movie. Now, the story of how this movie gets made is actually pretty interesting because Catherine Bigelow and the writer of the movie, Eric Red, who himself is something of a bit of a horror icon, the two of them wanted to make a Western. They wanted to make a Western, but in the 80s, Westerns are not popular. They haven't been reinvigorated by Unforgiven yet. They're not popular, but vampire movies are. I think at this point, The Lost Boys had come out. Vampires are hot right now. So they were not able to get funding for a Western movie, but they were able to get funding to make a vampire movie. So they made a vampire Western, and it's extremely effective. A large part of why the movie is so effective, why it's so much fun, is its cast. The cast is absolutely phenomenal. The most notable parts of it is the vampire clan, the nomadic vampire clan, is made up of Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton, and Jeanette Goldstein. And if those names are somewhat familiar to you, you're probably a fan of the movie Aliens, because they were all stars in the movie Aliens. And it's not actually a surprise, because at the time, Catherine Bigelow was friends with James Cameron, the director of Aliens. In fact, they actually wound up getting married and then subsequently divorced, but that's neither here nor there. And James Cameron recommended these actors for the movie, and they are phenomenal. Bill Paxton, in particular, is a standout as a vampire. He is chewing up scenery. He is incredible. The movie embraces a lot of really interesting themes, really interesting ideas. But the biggest one, the most forefront of them, is the idea of being tempted to have this outlaw lifestyle, this vampire lifestyle, to embrace that, or to go back to being the good guy. And that's where you really start to get some of those Western tropes. You've got your hero who is actually kind of becoming an anti-hero, and which way will he go? Will he stay on the side of good, or will he fall into evil? It's a really fascinating story. It's a really interesting look at the vampire tale, because it's an interesting spin on being turned into a vampire. It's the kind of thing where it's not saying it's against his will. It's not saying he totally wants it. It's somewhere in between, and he hasn't made up his mind. And that's an interesting thing to explore. It's not something that gets delved on too much in vampire movies, although there's so many of them. It's probably been covered quite a bit, but it's done extremely well here. Like I said earlier, the movie looks amazing. It's just got style for days. It's as cool as, if not cooler than, The Lost Boys, although for whatever reason, the movie never caught on as well as The Lost Boys did, and as a result hasn't endured as something of a cultural touchstone. And I'm not entirely clear why, but it does have that cult reputation now. Fans of the genre, fans of the subgenre of vampires know Near Dark, love Near Dark. There maybe are some people that don't absolutely unabashedly love it, but it's very, very popular. It's, dare I say, beloved by vampire fans because it's that good. And again, it's a testament to the director, the writer, and the actors for pulling this off with not a ton of money and making a work of art. Frankly, it's a fantastic movie, beautifully shot, wonderfully acted, very well written. It's not perfect. I don't want to oversell it. It's got some minor flaws into it. The central romance is one that maybe could have been fleshed out a little bit more, maybe with a little bit more running time, but that's a nitpick, honestly. There's enough chemistry there that you're not going to be taken out of the story. And again, the story itself and all the actors are great. So it winds up being quite a fun ride. Obviously, I'm a fan of Near Dark, and as you know, if you've watched the vampire video, I'm a fan of vampire movies, so it's an easy sell for me. But it wonderfully blends the two genres of horror and western together. It's a fantastic example of the horror western. So if you're interested in this subgenre, or if you just like vampires and you haven't seen Near Dark, you gotta check it out. It's a fantastic film. And if you have seen it, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Am I overpraising it, or is it really as good as I'm saying it is? Let me know what you guys think. The second horror western we're talking about today, the graduate level selection, is Ravenous. Ravenous came out in 1999 and is a strange movie, and that's probably putting it a little bit lightly. It is a horror western, but it kind of defies other genres at the same time. But we'll get into that in just a second. If you're not familiar with it, the movie takes place in the mid 1800s during the Mexican American War, and it's largely set at an outpost in California. A kind of a settler's outpost, and it's the story of a soldier who is relegated to this far outpost because while he heroically saved the day, he did it by being a coward, and so he's been relegated to this outpost of outcasts. And this ragtag group of outcasts one day comes across a survivor from a Donner Party esque experience where they had to resort to cannibalism to survive, and he's the last remaining survivor, but he might not be all that he seems. And we'll leave it there because I don't want to spoil Ravenous for you if you haven't seen it, because it's an experience. The movie is something else. It is a very unique, very interesting tale. It's a cannibal movie, as you can tell from my description, and honestly, from the title alone, you could probably just deduce that it had something to do with cannibalism. But it's so much more than that. There's so much going on in that movie it's wild. From the cast of characters who are all very eccentric and strange, to the setting, which is a period piece, it's a period western, to the subject matter and the lore that's built into it. It's all working really, really well, but it's a it's a very strange movie. I dare say I haven't seen anything like this movie ever. This movie to me feels very fresh and original. Like I said, a big part of what makes the movie work is the cast of characters, led by Guy Pearce as our hero, and then there's Jeffrey Jones and Jeremy Davies, David Arquette. There's a Neil McDonough. There's a lot of recognizable actors in there, but it's Robert Carlyle as the strange visitor who comes into the camp, who really steals the show. He is chewing scenery, no pun intended, and he is absolutely fantastic. He's riveting in the role, and he's a big part of what makes this movie as fun as it is. Because quite frankly, it's a bleak and extremely gruesome movie, but it's also strangely kind of funny at the same time. And part of that's because of the odd soundtrack. Part of that is Carlisle's kind of over the top performance. Part of it's this wacky cast of characters, these wacky actors, if you will, all kind of hamming it up in the best possible way. But it all works really well. Credit Antonia Bird, who is the director of this movie, for pulling this off because she came in late. I think it was the previous director dropped off or something like that. So she came in late. She had very little money, very little time, and managed to pull this movie off. And again, it's not a flawless movie. It's not perfect, and it's certainly not going to be for everybody. But given the constraints she had, the limitations she had, she did an amazing job of making this movie work. This movie just looks cool and gritty and dirty and like it's not an idealized or glamorized Western at all. It really is. It makes you feel like that's what it was really like at the time. But it never really loses its sense of fun. As dark as the subject matter is, as gruesome as some of the scenes are, it's still fun. It's kind of funny. It's hard to explain without spoiling it or without seeing it for yourself. But suffice to say, the movie could arguably be a horror comedy. I don't think I'd go that far. I know other people do decidedly call it a horror comedy. I think it's a little too gruesome for that, but I can see why people make the argument because it is funny. It's too ludicrous to take seriously, but they play it straight. They're not playing it for laughs, but it comes off almost campy, but in a good way. And I love the blend. I love this movie. I went and saw this movie in theaters opening weekend. Me and my buddy went to go see it. The theater was empty. Like nobody came to see this movie. It was not a big hit. And it was me, my buddy, and like one other guy showed up for the movie and sat like right next to us, which was probably more disturbing than anything I was actually seeing on the screen. It was really weird. This guy just kind of sat right next to us, and it was just like I was like too weirded out to even say anything. I was just like, "This is creepy," but it was a blast. The movie was so much fun, and I've always loved it ever since. And it's got again a bit of that cult following, not so much as Near Dark. Near Dark has a big following. Ravenous a little bit more niche. Like a lot of people don't know about it, and it's a shame because I wish this movie had found more of an audience. I hope that some of you who haven't seen it will check it out because Ravenous is something else, man. It's a lot of talent, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, and it makes what could otherwise be a disaster into something really, really cool. I obviously love this one too. I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's got a strong stomach, frankly, because again, the subject matter is cannibalism and it's a little gruesome, but it's a good ride. And if you can handle that kind of subject matter, you should absolutely check it out. And if you've seen Ravenous, let me know again what you think of Ravenous. My guess is many of you probably haven't seen it, and so I'd be curious for the ones that have. Do you like it, or does it live up to what I'm saying, or does it fall short for you? Does the weird tone just kind of throw you off? Because I bet some people are really put off by the strange tone, the strange music, the weird kind of sort of campiness of it. It's not going to be for everybody. So I'm curious to see what you guys think of it. Let me know in the comments. And the last horror western we're talking about today, the postgraduate level selection, is Bone Tomahawk. Bone Tomahawk came out in 2015 and is an absolutely fantastic movie, absolutely incredible, and I cannot praise it enough. I love this movie, and it's one of those movies that kind of came out of nowhere for me and just knocked me off my feet. I was blown away by it. If you're not familiar with it, the story takes place in the Old West and is about a group of men who round up a posse to go search for and hopefully rescue some people from their town that were kidnapped by a cannibalistic tribe of Indians. And the journey is long and arduous, and the threat is very, very real. The tribe is very, very dangerous. So it's quite possible that not everybody's going to return. And of course, I don't want to spoil it for you, so I don't want to go any farther than that with the description. But suffice to say that the movie is a wonderfully uh, surprising and interesting tale. I really, really love this movie, and I was surprised how much I love it. When it came out, it got some buzz. Like it was kind of a hot movie when it came out, and I held off on seeing it at the time for no reason at all. Just never got around to seeing it, and saw it a couple years after it came out. Man, it's one of those movies that I'd heard the buzz, and so I had these kind of high expectations for it. And if it at least met them, if it didn't actually exceed them, I was really surprised how much I liked it. Now, fair warning, the movie is a bit of a slow burn. It's a little bit of a longer film, and if you're looking for fast paced action, this movie is going to be a rough one for you because it takes a long time to get to a lot of the action. A large part of it's focused on the journey of the posse as they're going to try to track down the kidnapped people, and it's a days long journey. So a large amount of time of the movie is spent on the difficulty of that journey. And one of the characters is injured, and so a large part of the drama comes from whether or not he can make this journey because his wife is one of the kidnapped people and he's hell bent on saving her, but he's also lame. He's literally lame, and so it's that drama worked for me really, really well. A big part of why that drama worked really well is an amazing cast. The acting in this movie is fantastic, led by Kurt Russell as the sheriff, and then Patrick Wilson as the injured man, and Matthew Fox and Richard Jenkins. They are phenomenal. The chemistry between them is amazing. The camaraderie and the lack thereof in some cases, the distrust. It's what fuels the movie for me. And in a lot of ways, you could say this movie is just a straight western or even a western drama, because for large chunks of the movie, it is. It isn't really till you get to the final act that it really gets horrific. But that's the thing. When it gets to that final act, it gets bona fide horrific. The scenes with the cannibals are really gruesome, shockingly gruesome. You may not have seen this movie, but it's possible if you watch like horror videos like that you've seen or at least heard about the splitting of the person in the movie. I'm spoiling it slightly just to let you know that it's in there because if this is a movie you wanted to check out, you need to have a strong stomach for the end of it there. But I hope you would. I hope you would check it out because I do think it's really good. And the gruesomeness, while extremely gruesome, and I don't want to undersell it, is a small part of a rather large movie that again is largely a drama slash western that works incredibly well. The movie does have a lot of fun parts to it too, though. It opens up with David Arquette and Sid Haig as a couple of criminals. Sid Haig, horror legend, and so it's got some fun right off the bat. And then the interplay between the characters is also a lot of fun. Richard Jenkins, in particular, just kind of a scene stealer. Matthew Fox doing some of the best work I've ever seen him do. It's a lot of fun. It's also rather serious and it's rather gruesome. It's a really great blend of a lot of different things, a lot of different factors, a lot of different vibes or tones, and it's done beautifully. This movie to me was a masterpiece. I was really, really into it. I enjoyed it far more than I was expecting to. I mean, it's worth noting again, it is like your classic Western, even though it's a modern day movie. It's set in the Old West, and it does lend itself to some of the, let's call it what it is, cultural insensitivity regarding the Indians that is not necessarily great. Although the movie does take pains to differentiate these cannibals from regular tribes, and so there is that aspect to it. I just want to make sure you're aware of that before you go into it. I'm kind of giving you reasons not to watch the movie, and I hope that you ignore them because it is an excellent movie. And if you haven't seen it, you should absolutely check it out. I'm guessing several of you have seen the movie though, and if so, let me know if you think that this movie A is as good as I think it is because I absolutely love it. But B, let me know if you think it really is a horror western. Now it gets called a horror western a lot. That's not just me trying to shoehorn it into this subgenre. It's a widespread opinion that it's a horror western, in large part because of the gruesomeness in the final act. But I could see a case being made for it being just a western or a western action or something like that. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think it's a horror western or not? Let me know in the comments what you think because I can see the case for otherwise, but I definitely think it's a horror western because I am as inclusive as I can when it comes to horror, and I think it fits very nicely here. So once again, if you haven't seen this movie, absolutely check it out if you've got the stomach for it because I think it's brilliant. So those are the three horror westerns we're talking about for the syllabus today. But if you like horror westerns, we do have some extra credit selections for you to check out. The first one I'm going to mention is a movie called Grim Prairie Tales. And that title is a pretty fun pun, but the movie itself is also a pretty fun horror anthology in addition to just being a horror western. And it works pretty well on both of those fronts. If you haven't seen it, the movie stars James Earl Jones and Brad Dourif, yeah, as two guys sitting around a campfire who don't really trust each other so much and start regaling each other with various creepy stories. So it's quite literally a campfire tale story, an anthology story set in the Old West, and it works pretty well. It's not an amazing movie. I don't want to oversell it, and a large part of what makes it so enjoyable is the cast, the two leads, because those two guys telling stories is amazing. They have two of the best voices in all of cinema, frankly. And hearing them tell stories around the campfire, I mean, I could listen to that for days. The stories themselves are fun, the kind of creep show level type stories. I like that. I like horror anthologies. I am predisposed to enjoy those. So I was predisposed to enjoy this movie. And like I said, it's fluff. There's a reason why it's not a super well known movie. It's not a bona fide classic or anything like that. It's mostly fun because of these two leads and because it's an anthology, but it's a Western anthology. That's a lot of fun for me. The other noteworthy thing about it came out in 1990 and was the first movie that Janusz Kaminski worked on, famous cinematographer for Steven Spielberg. Now, he wasn't the cinematographer here, he was like the second unit guy or something like that. But it is noteworthy that this was his first movie. And then a couple years later, he would be doing Schindler's List for Steven Spielberg, and then basically doing every Steven Spielberg movie since then. So everything you've seen of Steven Spielberg since the early '90s is Janusz Kaminski filming it. And so That's noteworthy. I mean, he's an Academy Award winning cinematographer. He's got a long and illustrious career, and it's kind of neat and noteworthy that he started here in this kind of schlocky movie. But it's a fun movie. It's definitely worth your time. And if you like the horror western, this is not a bad one to check out. Much less gruesome than what we've talked about earlier, but still a lot of fun. The next extra credit movie I'm going to talk about is called The Burrowers. And The Burrowers came out a few years ago and has a surprisingly similar plot to Bone Tomahawk, but with some very significant differences in it. If you haven't seen it, the movie is about a settlement in the late 1800s that gets attacked and some people get kidnapped, but they aren't kidnapped by Indians. They're kidnapped by monsters that burrow under the ground and attack you from below. And the unsuspecting posse doesn't know what they're up against when they go out there. And I won't say any more than that. I don't want to spoil it, but the movie is a lot of fun. The monsters are really cool looking. I couldn't get past though how much it felt like Bone Tomahawk, or like it's Bone Tomahawk light. It has a largely the same setup and same plot, albeit instead of cannibalistic Indians, it's monsters from under the ground. But it's very similar in every other regard. It's got, the guy looking for his fiance, not wife in this one, and it's got the posse going out there and looking for what they think are Indians, but are not. And so it really winds up suffering for the comparison, if I'm being honest with you, because Bone Tomahawk has far better actors, far better storyline, far better direction, and frankly, far better budget. But considering all of that, if you can take the Burrowers and just evaluate it on its own, it's a good movie. It's got good actors led by Clancy Brown. Who doesn't love Clancy Brown? They're doing a good job. Again, it might pale in comparison to Bone Tomahawk, and I actually saw them like around the same time. Although amusingly, I think the Burrowers came out a few years before Bone Tomahawk. So really, probably Bone Tomahawk ripping off the Burrowers rather than the other way around. But I saw them the other way around. So to me, the Burrowers seemed like an inferior Bone Tomahawk, but on its own, still really good. A large part of the reason why is because the creatures are a pretty cool design. They're pretty interesting. Again, budget limits how much they can do with them, but despite that, they made them look cool. They made them interesting. They made them scary, and it worked for me. It was a really compelling story that worked for me. And actually, the only thing is the Bone Tomahawk comparison. Otherwise, I actually really enjoyed the Burrowers, and I would recommend it to you. And if you're interested in both and haven't seen either of them, watch the Burrowers first, maybe, and then watch Bone Tomahawk. That might be a better way to do it. But I would say if you haven't seen it, check it out. And if you have, let me know what you think. And the last extra credit movie I want to bring up is John Carpenter's Vampires. And once again, we're looking at a neo-Western that doesn't on its surface seem like it's actually a neo-Western. It seems like it's more of a vampire movie because it's literally called Vampires, but it is a neo-Western for sure. If you haven't seen it, the movie stars James Woods as a vampire hunter who works for the Vatican. He's basically going out and eradicating nests of vampires and comes across a head vampire that is unlike anything he's ever seen before and is on some sort of mission that he needs to get to the bottom of. And meanwhile, he suspects that somebody in the church is a mole who is selling him out. And the movie is a lot of fun. It's not one of Carpenter's best. Let's be clear about this. It's not on the upper echelon of the Carpenter oeuvre. It's a B movie, frankly. It's a campy B movie. Maybe not. Yeah, it's campy. It's campy because everybody's really over the top in this movie. They're playing it straight, but it's so over the top that it kind of comes off as campy. But it's still fun. It's action packed. It's gruesome. It's got a lot of fun kills in it. It's got swagger for days. James Woods just chewing up scenery. Daniel Baldwin as his partner is fantastic, and I know it's kind of weird to say a Baldwin not named Alec is fantastic, but Daniel Baldwin, who's in Homicide, which is one of my favorite cop shows, he's a good actor. I'm sorry, he is, and he's good here. It's got Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks. You know how I feel about that. She's not given much to do. More on that in a second, but the movie is fun. It's basically just going out and killing vampires, but it's got those motifs, those Western motifs. It's got your anti-hero. It's got your vistas, your plains, your desert landscapes. It's got that cinematography. John Carpenter knew what he was doing here, making a neo-Western, and it shows. And he's doing a great job. It's because of John Carpenter this movie's as good as it is. Frankly, it'd be a very schlocky movie, and it is a schlocky movie, but Carpenter makes it better than it has any right to be. That said, the movie is arguably misogynist. It doesn't treat women very well. They're all basically victims or whores or both. That's it. That's all women are in the movie. Cheryl Lee is mostly in the movie to scream and get slapped around, which is unfortunate because I like Cheryl Lee. She's really a great actress. I really enjoy her. So that's a bit of a blight on the movie. But if you can get past that, the rest of it's a fun ride. And they do a little bit of a, try to redeem that a little bit at the end of the movie. It doesn't really work so well, but for the most part, it's like I said, if you can get past that, it's a fun ride. It's an enjoyable romp. And again, I'm a sucker for vampire movies. I enjoy them. So for me, this one is easy to like. Others might disagree. I know this movie is polarizing. Some people think it's fun. Some people think it's terrible. I think some people grade it a little harsher because it's John Carpenter and it's not as good as his great stuff. And I can't argue with that, but I still think it's a lot of fun. So let me know what you guys think. If you've seen it, do you like this one? Do you hate this one? Because it seems like people go either way on this one. But if you haven't seen it, check it out. Let me know what you think about it because I do think it's a good time. So that's going to do it for our exploration into the horror Western. I hope you enjoyed looking at some of these movies as much as I have because horror Westerns, Westerns in general, much better than I thought that they would be. And the horror Western is a really interesting niche subgenre that deserves exploration. If you haven't really dove into it, you should check it out. Now, as promised, I'm going to do a horror trivia question. This is a new feature to the channel, and I've just started doing this, and I'm going to take a card, and I'm going to read the horror trivia question right here live on camera, and then try to answer it. I'll give you a few seconds to answer it as well at home, even though I won't know what you said. And we'll see if I get it right, and see if I embarrass myself by not knowing it right off the bat. So I'm going to put on some glasses so I can see, and I'm going to read the under the subgenre of the category of gore and disturbing. I'm going to read the question. In the 2007 movie Teeth, which character is not subject to the titular trait of Don O'Keefe? Ryan, Bill, Toby, or Brad? Okay, I love Teeth. I think Teeth is a fantastic film, and we will be talking about that movie in the future. But I don't know the answer to this question. Now, they've given me multiple choice. Ryan, Bill, Toby, or Brad. Which one didn't get the teeth? And I can remember the characters, but I don't remember their names at all. So if you know it, good. And let me know in the comments if you got it right. And of course, Scout's honor, because I don't know for sure if you got it right or not. I'm going to take a stab. I'm going to guess. And I'm going to say Toby, just because all the guys that get it in that movie are they got it coming. And out of all those names, I think Toby feels like the least threatening of them. Sorry if you're a Toby out there. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I'm going to go with Toby. That's going to be my selection. And let's see if I was right. I was not right. For those of you playing at home, the answer is Bill. And when I get around to talking about teeth here on the channel, I will remember this, and I'll probably bring this up, how I was embarrassed by not knowing the answer to this question because I didn't pay attention to the character names. I did remember that the main character's name was Dawn. I did remember that. So that was my epic failure. Horror trivia here on camera for you guys. So you can see I do not know these questions ahead of time. I'm honestly answering them right off the bat. I hope you guys were getting the question right. Let me know if you got it in the comments below, or what you got wrong. Did you think it was Toby also? Did you use my reasoning? But be honest. Let me know if you got it right. Let me know if you got it wrong. But yeah, I think this is a fun way for us to play a little game at the end of the video. And it is, in fact, the end of the video. So let me just thank you for hanging in here this long. Thank you for indulging me and talking about the horror Western. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. I really appreciate you guys chiming in down below. It means a lot to me. So until next week, class dismissed.